students, welcome to the Pharmacognosy and Metabolic Engineering online certification course. This is the first lecture, Pharmacognosy and Medicinal Plants. Let us first see what are the concepts which I am going to cover. First is about the historical evidence, then quest for herbs, then traditional Chinese and Indian medicines, then discovery of bioactive natural products from plants, and then other specialized metabolites which we will call natural products used in daily life. So, this is basically a painting by Jacqueline Louis David made in 1787 about the death of Socrates. So, Socrates, the famous Greek philosopher, we all know that he was forced to go for death sentence by consuming hemlock. So, what is hemlock? Hemlock is a poison prepared from the plant extract of Conicum maculatum, and the active ingredient which is responsible for the toxicity is conine, the structure of which is shown in the left side. So, the point here is this, that poisonous plants are nothing but also it is also a type of medicinal plants. So, people were aware about it more than several hundred years ago. Now, Theophrastus, who is basically called the father of botany, so he first gave idea about the plants which could be a good source for medicinal compounds at that point of time. Okay. Later, if we look into the ancient literature, what we find, first of all, that if you see in the middle of this slide, so this is what it is. This is nothing but the documentation of distillation methods used by people more than several hundred years ago. So, when it is called distillation, that means basically their aim is to isolate either some essential oils or some metabolites. And what you see in the left side is that even in the year of 1625, well established botanical gardens were there in several universities in Europe, including famous Leiden University. And what you see in the right side is basically the apotheke shop, that is in German word, that is the herbal shop where people are coming to buy the medicines. So, from there what you see that over the period of years, people started to explore different plants. So, they visited jungles, they collected plants unknown, they first they identify the plants, and from there they try to extract the phytochemicals out of it, and that eventually led to the discovery of several wonderful natural products, which eventually found application in pharmaceutical industries. Still, herbs as a source of medicine and herbal medicines are practiced in different parts of the world. So, the pictures showing in this slide is basically that different herbal medicines and the herbs are being available in the market, and more than 150 most prescribed medicines have at least one ingredients which derive from plant. Now, if you look into the Chinese traditional medicine, where you see in the left side is basically the artemisinin. It is a very well known compound. Now, everyone knows this is produced from a plant called Artemisia annua. So, what is artemisinin? Artemisinin is basically a terpenes, and it is used for the treatment of malaria. The right side is basically ginkgo. So, ginkgo basically helps to rejuvenate the memory power. So, ginkgo extracts, ginkgo dry leaf extracts are available even now in the markets. So, and it is a very popular botanical drug. The other one is this scrofularia, which is called fig oat root, that is also very popular. It is not much available in our country, but it is used for the treatment of arthritis. Now, if you look into the Ayurveda, our Indian traditional medicine, so where you find few examples like senna. Senna is a very popular botanical drug. It is used as laxative and also it is used for making herbal tea. The active ingredients are shown here, which are nothing but the polyphenol compounds containing sugars. So, it is called phenolic glucosides, and the most common one what you see in the middle is basically the haldi or haridra, which is curcumin. So, here is the compound, it contains 2 benzene rings and then the aliphatic chains. So, the Cucurma longma, and we all know about the benefits, health benefits of using this turmeric. The last one what is shown here is basically Vidaferin A. So, this compound having diverse function including anti-cancer activity, and that is basically produced by ashwagandha, scientifically called Withania somnifera, and the ashwagandha are also available as botanical drugs in herbal shops. From here, if we now move and look a little bit back, what we see that starting from 1820 onwards, we see the availability of, or we can see the knowledge of salicylene. So, salicylene originally isolated from the willow bark. So, its salicylic acid is a well known term. So, salicylene is nothing but a derivative of salicylic acid, and that is the acetylated form of salicylic acid is called aspirin, which is a well known drug, we all know. Okay. What you see bottom here is basically quinine. So, quinine is produced from the bark of Cinchona species, Cinchona officinalis, Cinchona ledgeriana, okay. And quinine we know this is the traditional antimalarial drug. Okay. Now, if you see here in the middle you find morphine, all of you know about morphine, that is a strong painkiller, right, and which was basically isolated from opium poppy. And what you see here in the picture is nothing but a poppy fruit, and if you use a sharp blade and try to cut it, you will see that drops are coming out. So, these drops are basically the rich source of alkaloids. These drops are called latex, and if one can do analysis, they will find the good amount of morphine, and one can detect it by thin layer chromatography. Now, in the right side, extreme right, which what is showing the structure of Taxol. Taxol is one of the most promising anti-cancer compound used for treating ovarian and breast cancer. So, Taxol was purified from Pacific yew, which is called Taxus brevifolia. So, it requires mature Taxus brevifolia plant, and the bark of the Taxus brevifolia basically to be stripped out, and then from there Taxols are isolated. So, Taxol is basically called the trade name, the scientific compound is called paclitaxel or taxater. So, we will talk about it later in due course. Now, I have also mentioned about Artemisia. So, Artemisia, and that is basically a Chinese medicinal plant, and there is a demand of artemisia is very high as showing here. And also I have said previously about the cinchona and the quinine alkaloid. Here is the structure of the quinine alkaloid, and synthesis of these alkaloids are difficult. So, that is why still the industries depends on the harnessing of the drugs from the plants itself. What we also see that there is a discovery of cardiac glycosides from foxglove, scientifically called Digitalis purpurea. So, William Withering, an English botanist and a doctor, he first basically found the importance of foxglove in treating heart patients. So, the digoxin, which is basically a cardiac glycoside which is isolated from the foxglove, and is well known component of any drug used to treat the heart patient. Now, come to the vinca alkaloid. Vinca, it is also called Catharanthus roseus. In our language it is called Indian language is called Sada Bahar, in Bengali it is called Nayantara. So, you can find both white as well as pink varieties of Catharanthus roseus, and these these plants harness vincristine and vinblastine. So, from this plant vincristine and vinblastines are harnessed, which are nothing but the dimeric indole alkaloids. So, these alkaloids itself are very toxic. So, if you take any Catharanthus or roseus leaf and just cut it from the plant, you will find the latex coming out. So, the latex are the rich source of this dimeric indole alkaloids. We will talk about it later in very detail, and basically what it does is basically the bind to the free tubulin dimer, and that is way it basically arrest the cell division. Another important drug is ephedra. The main content is called ephedrine. So, ephedra is used for dilating bronchial passages and which helps to relieve asthma and respiratory problem. Ephedra plants are available in India, particularly in the Spiti valley. So, it requires temperate climate, and of course, people also there are report of abusing this ephedra as well. So, anyway that is not our concern, but I have also mentioned that in the slide here. So, ephedrine is also a promising botanical drug, and next come to this one, a beautiful pictures of several physiologically active alkaloids and the plants produce them. Like morphine I have mentioned, the plant is called Papaver somniferum or So, not only morphine, but also codeine is also produced. Codeine is also a strong analgesic like morphine, but also it is antitussive, or that means cough suppressant. Conine I mentioned while talking about this Socrates' death. Strychnine from Strychnos nux vomica. Nux vomica is a well known homeopathic drug. So, the active ingredient is strychnine. Taxol I have already mentioned, vinblastine dimeric indole alkaloid I have already mentioned. Now, Rauwolfia serpentina, which is called Sarpogandha, that plant also produce an important alkaloid which is called ajmalin, which is also used in treating blood pressure, and Coffea arabica, which is coffee which produces caffeine, and that is also alkaloid. Quinine I have also mentioned, and Hyoscyamus niger, it is called henbane, that is produced scopolamine and atropine. So, atropine is used earlier to dilate the pupil, it is a tropine alkaloid. So, that used by the eye practitioner. So, they put a drop the pupils are dilated, so the doctors can examine it. But nowadays synthetic drugs are available, which mostly now replacing the atropine. Okay. Cocaine from erythroxylon, sanguinarine, that is another alkaloid which is produced by Eschscholzia or called California poppy. Okay. Camptothecin is another promising anti-cancer drug. This is originally a Chinese herbal medicine, and tuberculin, which is Condodendrum tomentosum, which is called which produces the curare poison. So, and the poison is basically stored in a tube before it is being injected to the victim. So, that is called tuberculin, and those who have seen the famous Sherlock Holmes movies. So, there such means that curare poison is also mentioned. So, anyway, come to another popular botanical drug which is called Panax, which is Panax is the scientific name, but the drug is called ginseng, and ginseng has several medicinal applications. And the important point is this, that age and growth condition is basically affecting the biochemical properties. So, the ginseng, the older roots and rhizomes, this is basically roots, mostly stored roots. So, much older roots have much more highly priced commodity. Now, come to the phenolic compound used in our daily life, right. So, from the typical medicinal compounds or medicinal plants, we are moving into broadly other plants which are also used in our daily life, which also help us to keep us healthy and well. So, in other words, of course, these are health promoting compounds. Chlorogenic acid, although you will find it in the coffee, you will also find it in the tomato. So, when we eat tomato, it is an antioxidant. So, not only because of the lycopene, but also chlorogenic acid. All of you know about the clove, lavang. So, the clove contains chavicol and eugenol. Okay. Nutmeg is another important plant. So, the nutmeg fruit produces this myristicin, which has several medicinal applications, and the famous dalchini, in our language is called darchini, which is nothing but the cinnamon bark. So, it produces very nice fragrance which we use to flavor our foods. The principal compound is cinnamaldehyde, which will come under phenolics group. Now, all of us like to drink green tea in addition to black tea. So, the green tea contains a rich source of polyphenols, which are nothing but epicatechin and epigallocatechin. The epigallocatechin galates, there are several. So, this is basically the structure of this epicatechin and epigallocatechin. So, it is just the functional group, either hydrogen or hydroxyl, and so green tea is basically very good for to keep us healthy. So, it is a healthy drinks, and tea after harvesting, it depends on the type of processing, whether you make green tea or you make black tea. So, when it becomes black tea, then these polyphenols are getting converted into thiorubidin and other compounds, thioflavin, but in the green tea you will find these polyphenols intact. Now, come to the ginger, adrak. So, nothing more to tell about, but the principal compound is gingerol. This is the structure, and in the pepper you will find both the capsaicin, the one of the most pungent one of the compound which gives the pungent flavor, that is capsaicin. In addition to that, it also produces piperine, which is also one alkaloid. Now, come to the fragrance of rose, fragrance of orchid. One of the principal compound of rose fragrance is phenylethanol, and which is a much stronger fragrance, and if the rose smells more sweet. So, that is when the phenylethyl alcohol or phenylethanol converted into phenylethyl acetate, the esters. So, and then the most sought after flavor compound, which is vanilla flavor. Vanilla is used in ice cream, in sweets. It has several applications. The natural vanillin is very costly, because it is harvested from the vanilla pod. So, the demand is too much, that much supply is not there, but synthetic vanillin is very cheap. But if you take the natural vanilla pod and analyze, you will find the vanillin, which is this compound, along with other phenolic aldehydes, which together constitute the natural fragrance of the vanilla. But synthetic vanillin is mostly used because it is cheaper. In the ice cream, what you get is basically the fragrance of synthetic vanillin. Now, come to another one. This is the red wine, which is good for health, which is why it is so, because it produces a compound which is called resveratrol. It is nothing but a stilbene as a phenolic compound, and that is why it is recommended in the western countries that one should consume red wine to keep them healthy. So, I mentioned about floral fragrance like rose, but also the color attracts us. So, in floriculture industry, they are basically doing a lot of plant breeding in order to develop different attractive colors. Now, through traditional plant breeding you cannot achieve, there are certain limitations, but once you use the fundamental approach, that means once you know the metabolic pathways and if you know the enzyme and genes, you can target that. You can either block unwanted route, or you can make the flow more towards the wanted pathway, that leads to the formation of several compounds which are called anthocyanins. So, the cyanidin is the principal anthocyanin responsible for the red color. Similarly, delphinidin is the principal anthocyanin responsible for the blue color. So, where we are now? So, the traditional what I have discussed in this lecture about the medicinal plants, their uses as a whole as botanical drug, and the principal compounds which is responsible for the particular bioactivity. Okay. Now, what is required, that we need to know more about the metabolic pathways, we need to know more about the metabolites. It is not only the principal metabolites, but also there are several minor metabolites. So, in order to know that, we need to have a good detection system. Why we need to know that? Because if we later do metabolic engineering to increase their production and diversity, we need to know what are the other metabolites present in that. Otherwise, what will happen, that you intended to do metabolic engineering for a compound X, you may find that X remain unaffected, but Y getting enhanced. So, we need to find out the relationship between say X and Y, for example, here. So, I am not drawing here X and Y, at the later classes I will talk about that. What is showing in the left side is basically a technique called mass spectrometry, through which different metabolites can be detected, and then once we know that, it is possible to the metabolic engineering. So, if we conclude what we have learned, that plants continue to be used worldwide, not only for obtaining products of daily need, but also to treat diseases as well, right. So, both the aspects I have mentioned in the earlier slides, and here I would like to mention here the pharmacognosy, once it is virtually wiped out from botany and pharmacy curriculum as outmoded area of study and research, particularly in the United Kingdom. Okay. But now with the advancement of the phytochemical techniques and phytochemistry, it has revolutionized our ability to investigate the medicinal agents in plants, and now once again the pharmacognosy is coming into the curriculum, and in the traditional pharmacy courses at the master's level, pharmacognosy is being offered. But again, once again I am telling you here that we are not basically talking about that pharmacognosy. So, here pharmacognosy means the study of medicinal plants, and we are going to study the metabolic pathways of leading to production of a desired medicinal compound. So, that is the modern pharmacognosy, and that is why I linked pharmacognosy with metabolic engineering. So, in other words, pharmacognosy here in this course we will study the metabolic pathway in a simplified way. Okay. And this with the new techniques, new medicinal agents are discovered. So, there is really now a new way of looking into the pharmacognosy research. So, pharmaceutical industries are now interested to invest money, and as a result of the industrial research along with the academic partners, it is possible to discover new medicinal constituents that will help to treat several ailments. So, with this I end my first lecture. Thank you.